As good as saying in Zimbabwe, welcome to our channel, Zim Confessions and Deep Secrets. Kana karibu happening on channel, please don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe. Don't forget to comment and share this video. Nasipare Zimbabwe, takigirai nyabuditswa na the exiled former cabinet minister by Jonathan Moyo. Na vabuda vachipa warning kuna investigative journalist Yapihwa Chamisa ne idea kufoma a government in exile. Chingono funga kabuda recently achikola for the formation of a government in exile. That is the only way to deal with what he calls President Emmerson Mnangagwa's bad governance. Jonathan Moyo kabuda achipa warning kuna Yapihwa Chamisa about this idea. It is very dangerous, and his idea inogono consult atange kuonekwa as an enemy of the state. Akabuda on his ex-handle, Jonathan Moyo started government in exile explainer. Because in politics, there are concepts or words which, while common and seemingly simple and straightforward, can in fact be very dangerous and can attract dire consequences if used meaninglessly or recklessly in a manner that creates or conveys criminal intent. One such concept is a government. What is a government? By definition, a government is a homegrown constitutional law and legitimate system of order in the governance of a nation, state, country, or territory with an acknowledged and recognized right under national and international law to create and enforce societal rules for the maintenance of law and order, defense of the physical or geographic integrity of that nation, state, country, or territory, conduct of its foreign affairs and management of its economy, and for the provision of public services for the general and common welfare and well-being of its inhabitants or population. The following consequences are key about a government. A government must be constitutional, lawful, legitimate, and must have effective control of the nation, state, country, or territory in question. Anything else making claims of being a government without these features would be unconstitutional, unlawful, illegitimate, and therefore liable to be seen as subversive and treasonous. A government must be generally acknowledged and recognized nationally and internationally as having the right to rule or govern the nation, state, country, or territory in question. A constitutional law and legitimate government cannot be formed outside the nation, state, country, or territory in question. In other words, it cannot be formed in exile, let alone on the internet. An unconstitutional, unlawful, illegitimate, unacknowledged and unrecognized government in exile cannot effectively or meaningfully engage or interact with the resident population of the nation, state, country, or territory in question because it will be illegal for that population to engage or interact with such a government in any way, shape, or form. A constitutional, lawful, and legitimate government can exile itself as a consequence of major violent conflict which displaces the population or war, as happened, for example, in a number of instances during the Second World War. It is a violation of international law and a grave act of hostility for any country to host an unconstitutional, unlawful, and illegitimate, unacknowledged, and unrecognized government in exile. Learn or perish. Those are Buddha Story. Na Jonathan Moyo, muri Zimbabwe, nazvisnei Yapihwa Chamisa anakumira pabuda achiresponda. Story iye achiti, thank you for your input, Professor. I believe I was clear that the government in exile was an idea for Zimbabweans to reflect upon. I also mentioned that the name is not set in stone. It is up to the citizens to come up with a name after careful consideration, and many have already begun doing so. You speak of illegitimacy, but nothing could be more illegitimate than a government brought to power through a military coup, and that has twice reinvented itself through rigged elections. which you yourself wrote about in your excellent must-read book, Exile. You correctly defined the last election in this way. It's a shame that 43 years since independence, whose clarion call was the right to vote under the one-man, one-vote banner. Under the one-man, one-vote banner, ZEC has used the 2023 harmonized general elections to make a mockery of the right to vote. Ironically, in the month of August, when Zimbabwe commemorates the heroes of liberation struggle, whose single most important achievement in 1980 was the reclamation and restoration of the right of every Zimbabwean, there can be no doubt that when a government stands violating the constitution, as Mnangagwa's regime does, it is actually authoring its own illegitimacy. When a government abducts and tortures citizens for exercising their constitutional rights, it is illegitimate. When a government violates the very principles upon which it was built and fail to uphold the rights of the citizens, it is legitimacy which should be called into question. It surely can be illegitimate for citizens to fight for their rights. There is nothing inherently significant in a name. If your assertion is that it shouldn't be called a government, and if citizens agree with you, it could be called, say, the Zimbabwe Diaspora Forum or something similar. What matters more is what it is meant to do and what it will achieve. Now, Opochimono respond to the warning Yapihwa na Jonathan Moyo mre Zimbabwe tingazote munasei nyaya iyi kuti patiri kuita there are rumors yekuti janzi yekuti Opochimono ari kuda kucontesta gore ra 2028 as the opposition leader. Tingaziye kuti nyaya yachokwadi here kana kuti asi mamiriro zvakaita. One of my UK based lawyers Brighton Mutebuka vabuda vachitaura ivo vachiti not even Nelson Chamisa or Opochimono can free Zimbabweans since there is need for collective will millions ari muZimbabwe hanzi vakaluza fear yavo that way ndo pavanokwanisa kuva free. Abuda achiposta on his X and Mutebuka achitara yachiti freedom will come from the collective will of millions of Zimbabweans only if they dare to lose their fear. ED's task is to keep that fear in place, to render it impossible to even contemplate the idea. He does that through plucking off the few that try to challenge him and vanquishing them one by one, he said. And he knows what triggers them and what doesn't. That's why it is naive and foolish to seek to protest individually regardless of being a constitutionally protected right. To ED, protests alarm him because they create a risk of a catastrophic loss of power. A protester is an enemy and must be ruthlessly crushed to discourage a contagion effect. Zabuda Shtaurwa na Brighton Mutebuka tingaziwa tunena sei nyaya yathu dzeza muri kufunga pamusoro penyaya iyi mu comment section.